Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Hey, movie lovers, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson. We are the hosts of the Next Reel Film Podcast.
If you're passionate about films like we are, you'll love our show. Each week, we dive deep into a movie, discussing everything from the story and performances to the cinematography and score.
Not to mention budgets and awards. We have covered iconic series like Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather trilogy, examining themes of power, family, and the dark side of the American dream.
We've explored the works of groundbreaking directors like Catherine Bigelow, discussing her mastery of tension.
We've looked at heist films, great car chases, great years in film, couples on the run, and more.
Our discussions go beyond the surface, examining what makes each film tick. We believe that when the movie ends, the conversation begins.
And we'd love for you to join that conversation. Find the Next Reel Film Podcast on your favorite podcast app or at thenextreel.com.
The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Hooked on you, baby, you're golden. Time moves, I never noticed. Just can't get enough. Got me wonderstruck.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Make Me a Nerd. I'm Mandy Kaplan, and it is my mission to experience all things in nerd culture. And each week I am lucky enough to have a fantastic guest, friend, colleague, superstar come to the show, assign me something different from the nerd world, and see if I can get a little more nerdy as I go. Now, I have a major update for those of you who have been following my journey. Last show, I had on Zara Fuzzle, and she introduced me to Sierra Games' King's Quest IV. And she said, I won't spoil anything for you in case you want to play more. And listen, people, I thought, I'm not going to keep playing this game. It's too maddening. I don't get it. It's not for me. Well, Zara and World, I did. I kept playing. I went back and I still couldn't find the loot player and give him the book, but I achieved other things and I was better at it because I understood it more with Zara's guidance. So I might actually keep playing Sierra Games' King's Quest. It's crazy, but it's true. The first video game I've ever wanted to return to in my life. Now, I don't know if my guest today knows anything about this game. He is smiling and nodding and looking confused and handsome. Oh. But my guest, I'm very, very, very excited. He was one of the first people I wrote comedy with when I moved to Los Angeles 7,000 years ago.
That's about right.
He is a hilarious, compassionate, wonderful writer, actor, performer, improviser, and teacher of all of those things. He makes the world a better place each and every day. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Hader. Sorry. Can we do that again?
No, I think it's live.
Guys, it's Brian Bradley.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
My friend.
That was the nicest introduction of all time.
Well, you wrote it. I just read it.
No, I know. I thought I did a great work with it.
You were
if you don't pat yourself on the back and sing when you win, what's it worth?
Then what are we here for?
What are we here for?
Tell me, I've been on a big mainstream alert Jiminy Glick kick.
Oh, he's back. He's back. I couldn't be happier.
So now I'm in this big phase where I want to say, so tell everybody what you thought when you met me. No, but how did you and I come to meet? And
we met at Acme Comedy Theater, which was a sketch comedy company in Los Angeles. And I don't know if it still exists anymore.
That's why I'm singing taps.
Unclear. Oh, that was beautifully done.
Thank you.
But yeah, we met there we wrote some sketches together. We performed there together. And that was, I don't know. Oh, it doesn't matter when. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. You were one of the people in my sort of generation from that group of funny people. Yes.
And then that experience launched you. Because of me, you were able to go on to
yeah. I've been drafting off you this entire time.
Yeah. You're welcome. You wrote on many seasons of Mad TV.
Yes.
You have maintained a career writing on things like Star Trek So
That's right.
right. So
A show that I think I heard on the podcast that you love. You're a Scrubs fan, right?
massive,
That was
massive.
I wrote on that show.
Yeah.
Written a bunch of television and a few little movies and a bunch of pilots that you'll never see. And yeah, a lot of writing.
And we were on an improv comedy TV series together.
We sure
called
were.
World Cup Comedy.
That's right, with Mr. Kelsey
competed.
Grammer.
Yes, produced by Kelsey
Yeah.
Grammer, and when before he was a crazy right-wing Trumper,
Mhm.
and
or at least revealed as so. I think
yes,
I think there may have already been happening, but
probably. But yeah, I mean, we really there were many years where we circled each other.
That's right.
And then there were many years where we weren't speaking because you know why.
Yeah.
And now we're back together again.
Right. And then with the lawsuit settled out and it was like, I got my payout.
Yeah.
And I guess justice too. I think that's almost as important as the money.
NDA, Brian, NDA.
Yeah. No. I'm just, these are things that are publicly available. I'm not saying how much or what happened.
Okay.
But anyone who wants to do the research can go find out that, yes, we saw each other in court and yes, I was victorious. And part of that settlement is that I have to be on your podcast and you have to be nice to me. And yeah, I'll tick that box.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So what is your relationship with nerdery in general as I can peruse the shelves behind you, which are full of paraphernalia and is that Elsa from Frozen?
No, it's not Elsa. Right behind me?
Yeah.
Where? No,
with the
that's
white dress.
Oh, no, that's Galadriel and Éowyn from Lord of the Rings.
Watch your mouth.
How dare you? I know I'm speaking the old tongue. I can't do that.
I thought it was Galadriel. No.
No.
Okay.
It's Galadriel. It's Galadriel. Right. I once played Galadriel on stage.
I know you did.
I played both Gandalf and Galadriel on stage.
Big fan. Fellowship the musical. It's going to come up.
Oh boy. Yeah. So nerddom, been my whole life. I comic books is where I started as a little kid. And, I always loved, I'm a kid born in the 70s. So Star Wars came out when I was 8, and so Star Trek was in my life because my father was a Trek fan. And I just always instantly loved that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was very much in my house. Like my brothers and sisters all liked that stuff too. So it was not really strange to us. And then, I think I kind of went away from it for a little while, but at least as a like avid person, but I don't know.
Please tell me you started like riding motorcycles and smoking cigarettes and greasing your hair. And then you came back to Lord of the Rings.
Well, no, I wanted to meet women. And so the community of nerds was in that time was not replete with women.
Yes.
And I was also liked sports and things. So I kind of got into sports and stuff too, which then that was kind of hard balancing my geeky love kind of fell away a little bit for a while. And then I got into theater, which is just another, an improv comedy. They're all geeky. All of it is.
Right. But that's the best way to meet women.
Well, that's why I did it.
Straight guy in the theater. I know.
Primarily.
Yeah.
It worked pretty well. It's where I met my wife. And then
who is, by the way, AKA Geek Girl Authority is her
that's right.
online presence. So you really you struck gold there.
I did. She's well above my league in every possible way, but somehow she liked Star Trek. We met in college and I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And that honestly, now she's like far geekier than me. And half of this stuff behind here is hers. And she's actually a professional geek in that she publishes geekgirlauthority.com, which is a breaking news geek culture website that's been around for a decade. And she truly lives that that life. We both do. So yeah, I've just been in it,
I love
always
it
been
all.
in it. Even though I never really wrote stuff like that, I was in comedy. I still maintain that was like my pleasure reading.
Yeah.
It's anything I watched. It was like just my life outside of my work. Yeah.
So when someone, like, let's just say, oh, I don't know, a middle-aged mom and all-around supermodel says, hey, Brian,
Mm.
pick something for me to watch or read or experience for the first time. What made
Yes.
you settle on these 2 episodes of Star Trek?
Well, first of all, when you asked if I could try to make you a nerd about Star Trek, I was so terrified because I realized what a dumb decision it is, because Star Trek has got almost 60 years of content.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be, I think there's 12 series and one on the way. Lucky 13. There's 14 feature films. So it's a lot of content. And this is like back in the day when there were like 26 episodes of television.
Right.
You know, this is the old days, a lot of it. So there's tons and tons and tons of episodes. And I don't know. I chose these ones because, the first one that I asked you to look at was something called Inner Light, which is from Star Trek: The Next Generation. And it is a standalone episode. It is very Star Trek has a lot of faces. It has, there's people that love Star Trek for the pew pews and the spaceships and the aliens and all the rest of it, which I do too. And there are people that love the kind of diversity aspect of it, and it's sort of positive, uplifting, kind of hopeful look at the future. But a lot of it is that Star Trek tells like stories that are hard to tell in other ways. And I think Inner Light is one of those. It's standalone. It's got Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart, like being it's right front and center. I thought, you're an actor. I thought you would appreciate a well-acted one. And it is, generally speaking, in a world where Star Trek fans cannot disagree or cannot agree on much,
right,
it is really considered one of the like best episodes of science fictional television in history.
And for those who are not familiar with it, I did a ton of research, meaning I went to Wikipedia and I got a really brief summary. So here it is. In this episode, Captain Jean-Luc Picard is struck unconscious by an energy beam from an alien probe. While minutes pass for the rest of the crew, the probe makes Picard experience 40 years of lifetime as Kamen, a humanoid scientist whose planet is threatened by the nova of its sun.
That's right. You must have been in. You must have been in right away.
I did that that was my pre-show prep to look that up, because this really wasn't about the crew and outer space and dynamics and all of that. This really was about.
I could have done that, and there's lots and lots of that. I think I wanted you to see what I feel like is the best thing that a show like this can do, because there's plenty of other Star Trek episodes that could be the best episode, and they might have more pew pews and space fights, but this one was Star Trek can be very intimate. Yeah, it does that a lot. It does that. The series does that a lot overall.
Okay,
it's at least 50% of the series is little small stories.
So when was this made? Late 90s, you think?
So Next Gen premiered 87.
Oh, 87. So this would have been 92, 93.
Yeah, right. This is early 90s, season 5. And it was after the show had kind of gotten in its legs a little bit. And was, the weird thing about this was that, the original series of Star Trek was only on for a few years, and it was like kind of popular, but not that popular. But it was actually one of those shows that did better after it was off the air. And that was back in the days of syndication. So, it was just sold as content to stations around the country. And it was like the #1 syndicated show for 17 years.
Oh, I remember, before remote controls, skipping right by it to get to Brady Bunch. I can remember.
That's totally fair.
Turning that dial.
but it was Brady Bunch level of syndication.
Mm-hmm.
It was so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
You know, it was on all the time. And for whatever reason, when they wanted to reboot it in the 80s, the networks were like, I don't know if anyone will want to watch this. Maybe we could do a mini series or maybe whatever. And Roddenberry wouldn't do that. Gene Roddenberry, the creator. Mm-hmm. And it landed on this concept of putting it out as it was syndicated. It was a first run syndicated show, meaning it was on all different kinds of channels. Mm-hmm. Whoever bought it, it wasn't mm-hmm. sort of just CBS or Fox or whatever.
Right.
It was a syndicatable show, much like a Jerry Springer or a talk show.
Was
like
that way,
Baywatch,
wasn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
And by this time it had really become like this. They had figured out that, there's a huge bunch of people that want to watch. In some ways, this time period is really where like geek culture started, like the current culture we're living in, the Marvel, whatever, you know, mm-hmm. the whatever amount of geekdom that we see in our lives these days. It all kind of, it's one of the places that it started was like Star Trek they realized that there was a huge audience for this out there, and they could make a lot of money as geeks love their stuff.
Right.
You know?
And you were saying before I hit record and I rudely cut you off when we were chit-chatting, you were saying that what used to be counterculture or a niche thing has really become culture. I mean, this is now. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Like I remember going to Comic-Con. I don't know what year it was that I went. We went for like 10 years in a row. And my wife covers it, and you know, and panels there and things, and we just love it. And like we started to like go to like because we're in the entertainment industry, so you go to the con, you walk around in the big crowded convention center and all that, or go to a panel or two.
Right.
But then like what you're mostly doing is trying to get into parties because there's tons and tons of parties, and they're like red carpety, like velvet ropey. You got to be on the list, and it's like hilarious because I remember just standing at this party, and there's all these celebrities around because they're just trying to hide from the nerds who are in San Diego, and I'm like, it's like the cool kids came and took over our little clubhouse,
right?
And then now we're sort of standing on the outside of the clubhouse looking in, and we're like, well, at least they're at the party. You know, they kind of, that happened. And it was when I really realized that it's like, no, this is culture now. It's not geek culture. It's not fan culture. It's just culture, you know?
Yeah. I actually have a theory that Big Bang Theory had a lot to do with that. I think
I don't disagree.
Turned some tides.
It turned some tides. It's hilarious because for a lot of in the sort of deeper nerd community, I don't think Big Bang is beloved for a lot of reasons.
I know, because
they're sort of like pocket protector. They're like Revenge of the Nerds. So they're like, I love the show's great. It's tremendous. But like for a lot of people, they're like, well, the stereotypes those are like, it's not, that isn't really what the geek sort of world is like. It's sort of more what Hollywood thinks the geek world is like. And, you know, that's true. I'm sorry.
I would allow it. No, I mean,
I love the show. I think it's very funny. I think
it's hilarious. But I think with anything, if you're going to make a show about actors, it's not really how actors are. If you're going to make a show about baseball players, it's not really how baseball players are.
True. But you might not make baseball players like, you know, I don't know who's on first. You might not make exactly the way baseball players are, but you might not do the most cartoony possible version of them.
Right.
Which I think is the argument about Big Bang. But I do think that, you know, because of all the references and pop culture references that are all throughout Big Bang, which I love, you know, it's in meme culture is such a huge part of kids culture and all of our culture now, which is really just kind of like quoting your using your favorite content to sort of talk about your life. And I think that is sort of where we're at a little. I don't know. I'm an old nerd.
But Hey, that's why you're here. So
Oh, good.
while I'm thinking of Big Bang Theory, one of the first things I wrote down is Data feels like Dr. Sheldon Cooper. Is that intentional? His flat affect, and I know he's not human, right? Data can't be human.
No, Data's not human.
Right.
He is an android.
Good for him.
He is.
I'm an
he
iPhone.
Is, and his name is Data. So again,
Right.
fantastic. But he is one of the main characters in Next Gen, sort of the most popular characters in a lot of ways. Because again, they did a great thing with him. They didn't just make him a sort of robot. They made him a robot on a journey to be more human. And so some of the most stories that are the most about the sort of in the weeds humanity that Star Trek does are sometimes centered around Data as he tries to understand what it's like to be a human. But yes, he has a flat kind of affect.
Isn't that something that Spock was doing in the original?
Spock
was trying
definitely,
to be human?
Yeah, well, Spock is, I mean, technically he's half human. He's half Vulcan. So he is from an alien culture that is, they have gotten rid of their emotions over thousands and thousands of years. They have bred them out, and they work at keeping their emotions at bay. They are strictly logical people. So Spock has emotions, but he has to hide them all the time. And but he was sort of, he was the sort of logical. Data and he occupy the same place in the story.
Okay, gotcha. Which is also Sheldon Cooper on the show.
Yeah, 100. I mean, and again, for a lot of people, it's like, also, this is people on the spectrum, I mean,
right.
and I say that without any comic intent, because I think that's a part of the appeal of this, because a lot of people on the spectrum do love this kind of work because they can kind of see themselves in a way.
Yeah.
They see people struggling to understand the things they're trying desperately to understand.
Right.
And so it's meaningful in that. I've seen it a lot over the years. I've seen the love of the folks that have those kinds of challenges for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this episode was, there are elements of when we would see sci-fi things back in the 50s and you would see the string holding the, there's
some bad makeup. It was not shot in HD. Makeup was not HD makeup.
But there's also the idea that like the Jetsons flying cars, they have, so on this planet that he lives on, in this dream in this,
simulation,
the simulation, they have a doorbell. And it's like a little electronic pad, and they touch a button, and it lights up, and the door opens. And I'm sure in 1992 that was like, whoa, an electric doorbell that opens. And now it's like, it's the Ring. We all have
definitely
it.
Like the design sort of looks like a mid-level Mexican resort.
And they're all wearing like Coldwater Creek flowy.
Yes. There's lots of soft fabrics on that planet.
Palazzo pants or like MC Hammer pants on Patrick
full
Stewart.
Hammer pants. Absolutely. Yeah. There's not a tight binding piece of fabric on the planet. And so you're right. As they kind of create these worlds, some of them are a little better than others. I think they were, this episode was inspired by a George Harrison song called Inner Light. Okay. And it was also written, the concept for the show is based on the Tao, on Taoism. So there's a sort of Asian quality that runs through all of it, that is all sort of like Asian culture, but seen through a middle-aged white male writer in the 90s. So there's maybe some of that going on in there.
There's
little bit.
Progress, but not too much progress.
Yeah. He exactly. Not too much progress.
I loved the futuristic things, like soup is still a thing. Everybody still eats soup.
Well, I mean, it's another planet. It's not just the future. It's because like what happens is they're sort of less developed on that planet than the people on the Enterprise. So
I'm just glad soup is universal.
Soup. Well, first of all, soup is the best food.
What's better than soup?
There's nothing better than soup.
Right.
Every culture, it binds us together. It is the quantum of the universe.
Soup is love. Yes.
Soup is love.
And then he plays the flute, but flutes are not quite the same. He plays like a recorder and they call it a flute, and it's teeny tiny and weird. And
it's more like a penny whistle, to be flatly honest with you.
Oh, good call. That was my stripper name.
I think I saw you, and it was it had a kind of an Irish, you're from Boston. I think it was very popular there. It had an Irish feel to it.
Yeah, I am. So it was fun to see their, some of the things were like, oh yeah, you want some soup? And that's very plebeian and normal and not otherworldly and not futuristic. And then the flute was like, whoa, that's what flutes have become.
I think the intention of it is to kind of to make it not spacey at all, so like I think they wanted it to feel like home, and they wanted like to take away from the big grand stuff, and so it's like, here's some soup where I got to put your shoes away. There was a lot of
very pedestrian little moments.
Yeah, because it was meant. The idea was like, here's what it's like to live. Here's what our culture was like, and the only way to learn about our culture is to live in our soft fabrics for 40 years,
right?
And see what it's like. See what it was like to be here.
Yeah. What I took away. Here's a little moment where I'm going to try and be smart. Please. Heads up, buckle up, God. Brian. They were debating on this planet about a drought and having enough water, and essentially, I wrote down, "Ooh, this is actual political discord about climate change, today." And this episode is 40 years old or something. No, 30 years old. But I mean, do you feel that was the intention, or was it more for just to have a drama to discuss?
No, for sure.
But I felt like it was, heads up, humanity, you're messing up your planet.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I think, in this case, their climate's being destroyed because their star is getting hotter. It's at the end. It's about to explode, which ultimately it does at some point after the story ends. But and so over a long period of time, the environment on the planet is becoming unlivable. But at that time, I mean, all of this, Star Trek is the first interracial kiss was on television, was on Star Trek. The first sort of multiracial cast. Yeah. The more recent, I mean, and you can the kind of progressive bona fides of Star Trek are endless. I mean, you can talk about them forever. Even to this day, Star Trek Discovery has non-binary characters. It has a married gay couple. It has stuff that's even beyond that, and they are constantly kind of thinking about how to tell stories about our lives a little bit in the future with some pew-pews in space, but really giving us, that's really the point of, I think the best part of science fiction is you can kind of look at our life now through another lens and see these stories. And there's such a humanity about the idea of raising children. It's so sad. It's heartbreaking in the episode. He's trying to raise these children on a doomed planet. And, I don't think it meant as much in the early 90s when, it wasn't as keen as it is now to watch it, where many of us are really feeling like that. We're scared for our kids, but that's Star Trek. It's always a little ahead in that way.
Yeah. I mean, it was really lovely, the story. It was very moving, and watching him age and watching this family, go through an entire life cycle, watching him slowly progress into Larry David.
He did. Right? The mask gets it actually kind of looks like Johnny Knoxville as that grandpa character a little bit. I've bad grandpa. Yeah. It's like, it's not, look, it's 90s television.
What they were working with.
Is what they were working with. And I really think up converted, like now that you're watching it on your like 9000K TV, a lot of that stuff was completely made for regular, television before high def.
Right.
And so they've done their best to sort of fix it. But the makeup, like that would not have shown on your shitty television
Right.
in 1993.
But that's, don't fix it. Right. I'm
No,
learning this
no.
from purists from Star Wars. Don't go back and fix it. That's what it was. And that's what we loved. We loved it then and we'll love it now.
Right.
So don't go back and futz
And
with
also,
it, as my people say.
it's not about the makeup,
Right.
Star Trek is really more than almost any other franchise out there, is really about the writing and the stories. It's a writer's TV show. Even to this day, it's really about the ideas, you're trying to express. It's really not about the kind of special effects for the most part.
Right. Well, the diversity was so beautiful in the second episode we watched. I mean, that was
which is a newer, episode.
Very new. It's still in production. Their third season is coming. And that was the series is called Strange New Worlds. This was Subspace Rhapsody, a Critics' Choice nominee. Did you know that?
Yes, indeed. I did know that. I'm surprised that it got nominated only because they never nominate science fiction.
I was going to say that feels like a big coup.
It is. I mean, it's a musical episode, right?
That's why I gave it.
That's why I gave it to you. But it is also Strange New World. So there's several Trek shows out now, including the animated one that I worked on, which is called Lower Decks. And it is a Strange New Worlds is a prequel to the original Star Trek. So it takes place before the events of Kirk and Spock.
Right.
But it is completely 21st century in the way that it looks at how to make a TV show. So part of that is the diversity of the cast, and it's diverse in a number of ways, across all intersections.
Yep.
And that's just complete, for Star Trek fans, that's not even something that Trek fans blink at, because it's been literally a part of the show the entire time. Yeah.
And I remember hearing it about the original with George Takei and the woman at the control panel and
Uhura. Yeah.
Okay. Uhura. Yeah. And she's in the new one, Strange New World.
She is.
Wait, so for everyone out there.
She's got the big number. She's got the biggest number at the end.
Well, she's also got a Tony, right? From Jagged Little Pill, the musical.
That's right.
She's an impressive lady. I'm sorry. They are they. I should be very clear. They are they. Yeah. But the plot of this one is Captain Christopher Pike and the crew of the USS Enterprise, followed by some numbers and letters, encounter a naturally occurring fold in subspace, which, when interacted with, causes the entire crew to start singing their private thoughts and feelings. The episode is a musical, the first in the history of Star Trek franchise. I feel like I've been interacting with this fold in subspace my whole life, right?
You have.
My life is a musical. But so I guess what I want to know from a fan perspective, which you are, and also you had the experience of writing on a show like this. You're sitting around. What if it was a musical? Yeah, that would be fun. It's a musical episode. Then there's this freedom because it's outer space. Do you just create out of whole cloth? Let's call it what did I say?
Yes.
A fold in subspace, a naturally occurring fold in subspace. Yeah, that sounds good.
No,
Let's
yes
make it
and
that.
no. Yes
How
and
much
no.
research goes into it?
Well, so because it's been around a long time, and because all of that sort of tech babble has been a huge part of the show since the very, very beginning, it has been faithfully archived and collected.
Beautiful.
By the Okudas, a married couple who have kept all of this. They actually publish like compendiums and technical books that show all of these blueprints and help design all this stuff. So it is the by the time that you reach writing something like Lower Decks, you have all of that real made up science that is a part of the show. And you have to kind of honor what's, canon. So this is how space and the engines and everything works.
Right.
And so, if you're writing on the show, you either have to educate yourself about that or you've absorbed it as a fan or both.
Right.
So yes,
but
sometimes
you
you
gotta
have
look something up. You can't just say, we'll call it a whimwam.
There are technical advisors. So when we do something that we want to have happen, it then goes to the technical advisor who knows all of this stuff. And they will say, well, we can do this, this, and this, and they'll make it work. But sometimes we just have to hand wave and make something else up,
Right.
And it gets added to the canon, and it just goes, when you write something for something like this, it's now added to the history of the show, and it becomes real, becomes true.
Right. And I think that is different from, look, I am a self-proclaimed, internationally known Golden Girls expert.
There's no doubt about it.
Right. But I can point out, well, that's not what they said in season 1. In season 1, she didn't have a sister. And now but they don't honor. They didn't go back and archive and look and say, what did we say?
Yeah.
Oh, we should stick with that. They just would say, no one's going to know. We
But
can
I
have
would
the same
say
guy play 2 different characters. And,
I mean, on Family Matters, they had a daughter go up the stairs at the end of season 1 and never come back down. She just never appeared. Again,
who's that?
They had, I don't remember her name, but
Not Meg.
They didn't,
there was a different one.
They didn't need her in Family Matters.
Oh, Family Matters. I went to Family Guy.
Yes. No, understood.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, in comedy, I would say this, having written on a lot of comedies, say something like Scrubs, there's also kind of keeper of the lore even in a long running sitcom where we have to honor the things that came before, but it's much less sweaty than the fans who keep the wiki online there's something for Star Trek called memory something alpha, but there are multiple wikis for Star Trek, but
Bibles. Right.
They're Bibles, and as soon as your stuff comes out, it's up the next day. And I put my wife's name, and I gave them her picture, and it's an animated show. They animated her, and she's Ensign Kearns. My wife's Audrey Kearns, and I did that to be the best husband of all time. And now Ensign Kearns, who is a big guest, major role in that episode, exists. And Star Trek is also. There are star dates. They're kind of crazy. They don't make a lot of sense, but they are when the captain gives a log, they say star date whatever. So there's a chronological kind of history of when all this stuff happened according to their own dating system. So it's like that. That doesn't happen on Scrubs or Golden Girls. They might go, we don't really care. They won't remember. But on Star Trek, they will. I mean, they will, and they'll come after you.
No, you can't get away with it. Right.
No.
Sidebar, a friend who was writing on a procedural named a couple Mandy and Jeremy. And when we were watching the episode, we were like, that is so sweet. And they were good looking, most importantly.
Oh, God damn.
And then it turns out they were the ones murdering people.
Yeah, but I mean, it also still feels
right. What does that say? Audrey gets this love letter and she's a captain. And I'm a murderer.
She wasn't a captain; she was an ensign.
But
you are.
Excuse
me. You're murdering this podcast. I'll tell you that right now. You're killing it, absolutely destroying it.
Should we stop down and talk about how this is going, or should we just?
I'm having a great time. I could do this forever.
Oh, me too. So, Strange New Worlds is very different tonally. It almost feels like the lighter, brighter sitcom version of Star Trek.
I would say
I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're totally wrong. I think you're experiencing an episode that is a standalone, unique episode. But even I would also agree that there's quite a few very serious themes in Strange New Worlds, which I'm actually quite a big fan of the show and what they're talking about in it. But the tone has evolved, because it's just not it's evolved with the way that we experience content now, so it's glibber, it's faster, there's a lot more comedy, there's a lot more lightness to it, there's a lot more undercutting the seriousness because they know that people can't take it anymore. They sort of can't be in the presence of something too
that
serious
takes
when
itself
it's
too seriously. Yeah.
So they've responded to that, and I think it's wise. That's how the show survived for all these years, is it just keeps changing for the new generation of fans.
For the fans, this is something I'm learning as I go. The fans in this culture, the fans have such a strong voice. If enough people write in, they'll bring a character back. If enough people complain, they'll I was nerdicated a few episodes ago about Sonic, and the fans didn't like how Sonic was designed, so they redesigned him.
Right.
And Golden Girls has not come back, no matter how many letters I've written. And I'm offering cast lists and episodes, and they are not bringing it back for the fans.
Well, I mean, you can't bring Golden. You can't unless you've kept DNA of those ladies and can recreate them and then age them appropriately.
I have a whole new cast.
All right. Well, I'm willing to hear your pitch because I would certainly.
All I'm saying is Dorothy is Whoopi Goldberg and Marla Gibbs is Sophia. Let me start there.
I love this. Go. I don't understand why we haven't, other than, the problem with something like Golden Girls is that in terms of like rebooting it, and they don't seem to care normally, is that it's so iconic. Mm-hmm. Like those voices they're terrified of failing with something so iconic. With something like Star Trek, it's built to iterate. It's designed to give you new iterations
and reference,
and they don't care. They don't have the same burden as something like you couldn't do a rebooted Seinfeld, or you just couldn't because there's something so specific about it, and it's just the danger of failing is so high. Yeah. Although you can kill it, I know it.
I'm ready. Oh, yeah, I'm so ready. So, Strange New Worlds is very different. It's a prequel, very diverse, beautiful cast. Yes. Everyone was really great, except all of a sudden I heard Laya, and Carol Kane barrels into a scene. Are we supposed to not take Carol Kane seriously in anything?
Well, it is a challenge. I have grown. I, like you, when Carol Kane first arrived in the cast, I was like, is this real life? Is this happening?
Is this happening?
Because she's so bananas, and she's just always Carol Kane.
Right.
Like she just isn't really, she's Carol Kane. She doesn't an actor who's anything other than Carol Kane.
Yes.
And so now she's Carol Kane in the show. At the same time, I've watched her quite a bit. She doesn't have a ton of screen time, so as you might imagine, but she's had a couple of moments that were really, really fun, and I've grown used to it. But I don't love that. I don't particularly love that casting.
I find it took me out. It really did, and I'm not. I don't want to criticize, but it's like
you're not alone.
Come on, she's Carol Kane. She's
love
great on
Carol
Kimmy
Kane.
Schmidt. She's great on other things.
Yeah,
but just.
I don't know how it happened.
Right.
No, I know.
Someone lost a bet somewhere.
Yeah.
So the theme song of Strange New Worlds, having never heard it before, I'm hearing it. It's got all these cool vocals, the same way the Pitch Perfect movies start with a vocal a cappella version of the Universal theme song. And that's what this did. So my friend Google told me, it's not usually done this way, that theme song.
No,
that was very cool.
It was for the musical episode that they altered it. They did a lot of fun, cool things like that in that episode. The theme songs are hilarious because, the original theme song is famous and it has a lot of vocalizing in it. It's got a woman vocalizing all the way through it.
It does?
And oh yeah,
it's
I can't do it and won't do it. But go look it up, and it is her singing like vocalizing the melody basically, and it is very strange and very 60s. But it's really starting, with that sort of like, it usually starts with the captain and then a kind of like little bit of a sting, and the captain's talking over it. Whatever captain it is in this series is sort of talking about the mission of Starfleet, which is kind of the thing that's most insane about Star Trek that I think I can't believe it still exists, especially in this time, is that they're basically saying, we're here to study the universe. Mm-hmm. They're sort of in military clothes, but they're not military people. Right. They're scientists. Mm-hmm. They're explorers.
And then each episode is like, and here's something we don't recognize, or here's something threatening
constantly.
us. Yeah.
But they've gotten rid of money in the Star Trek world. There's no money. There's no poverty on Earth. There's no we've solved all our problems. It is a very positive sort of in a world of science fiction and sort of genre content that we're living in, we're basically auditioning our doom over and over again with zombies or the environment or an asteroid hitting the Earth or aliens invading or whatever. Star Trek doesn't really do that. Star Trek imagines, it's one of the rare things that says, what if it works out?
Yeah.
what if we're, there's still problems and stuff, but what if if kindness wins and openness and the idea of meeting the universe where it is, as opposed to dominating it and colonizing it,
love that.
and exploiting it. What if we meet it where it is and explore instead? And that's the basic premise. I can't believe it survived, but it's still with us,
I mean, that says something about humanity and what we all gravitate towards in the end. As my son is in the next room playing a first-person shooter, and I mean, there's room for all of it. I don't know about that. So if you're a super fan and you're like, oh, there's a new episode of Strange New Worlds, I can't wait to see what's going on, because clearly by the recap there are dramas that are happening amongst the crew and the characters, and there are love affairs. It felt a little soap opera-y in that recap.
It is. Yeah, it is. Well, that's very. If you were going to come to Star Trek, especially Next Generation and beyond, so not the original series, which was really in the 60s kind of what if it were a Western in space kind of thing. That changed with Next Generation, where you had a different kind of captain, and it was like you didn't have a kind of like shoot from the hip Kirk. You had this sort of a man who sought consensus. Like a lot of Next Generation is all the whole bridge crew sitting around working out a problem together. It's a lot of meetings.
Yes.
Where they're sitting around kind of talking through the problem and listening to everyone's ideas and stuff like that.
And respecting women. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
And their opinions. Yeah.
But it a lot of it is about the personal relationships on the show. It's a huge draw of the show. It's why Star Trek has never been, I don't think, even though there are 14 films, I don't think the films are terrific, because I feel like it's so basically a television show in that it's very intimate and it's really about these people together and their stories.
Right. And so as a super fan, you sit down, there's a new episode, and it's a one-off that doesn't advance the plot. I mean, this one did a tiny bit with Spock having some tension.
Yeah, no, there's actually several things in there that were dealt with.
But does that to me always feels like, as a kid, I would be like, a rerun. But I want to know what's going to happen, or when they do a flashback episode.
At least
and you're
it wasn't a clip show. It wasn't a clip show. Right. They went and wrote some songs.
It was a fun episode, but does it leave you wanting for... Okay.
Not at all, because I think, so when you really are like, one of the things that's different about genre shows is that there's a lot of, I've heard you talk about this before, there's a lot of lore. There's a lot of like baggage you're kind of carrying along with you when you go to try to write something like this or watch it or become involved with it. But one of the things that's amazing about them is very frequently we need a break from all that.
Okay.
We need a break from it.
A palate cleanser, a
It's a palate
sorbet.
cleanser.
Yeah.
And this is a very normal thing to happen in Star Trek, where you have, and again, not the more recent series are more serialized as television has become more serialized. The previous seasons were not as serialized. Previous series
Okay.
were not. There were a mission getting wrapped up every week.
Okay.
And yes, it existed in the universe where there were the bad guys. You'd see the bad guys from one show to another, one series to another, but the missions were sort of complete. It was mission of the week, basically. Now you have a little more where we're running arcs,
Right?
And that's actually newer to Star Trek than, and I don't mind it at all. I think it's responded to the way people watch television now,
Right?
You know,
Absolutely.
they love a soap.
Yeah,
they do,
even though they don't exist anymore.
So weird.
But so you gave me a heads up about the singing, and you said it's not the best singing. But so I was very pleasantly surprised.
Well, some of it was really good. When I rewatched it, I'm like, oh, I forgot that, like, oh, she's got a great voice and Uhura has a great voice. And then, like, you've got Spock and they're like, they wrote him a thing with 3 notes in it. And
it sounds a little like One Night in Bangkok.
Yeah. There's the theme, like the sort of like theming of the music is okay. I mean, it's Star Trek, but there are some real bangers, in there with especially a couple of people who really know what they're doing, who really know how to sing. And then like Rebecca Romaine, I'm like, I didn't know she didn't sound too auto-tuned to me. Like some of them sounded desperately auto-tuned.
Surprise.
She's amazing.
Okay. Now I'm very familiar with Rebecca Romaine.
Of course.
She is a mainstream staple, but her speaking voice is quite deep and rich.
It
and
is.
Her singing voice is like a near soprano. I was very shocked.
I was shocked too. It doesn't sound like it should come out of that body.
No.
But,
and although her slow song sounded a little Xanadu and not in a good way. I was not such a fan of the writing, the musical numbers. Now I could, going back to Scrubs for a second, as I often do, that musical episode, I could still sing you every song. That writing was fantastic. Because that was Avenue Q, right? The guys behind Avenue Q.
Yeah, I think so. It was before my time. I was on season 9, but that I think was those guys. This was the lady who was like the writer was the lead singer from Letters to Cleo.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
It's like a 90s indie. Well, they're actually hilariously, Mandy. It's a Boston band. And she so
you're pronouncing it wrong. It's Letters to Cleo.
Letters to Cleo.
Yeah.
And she is famous for singing the anthem at Gillette Stadium before the Pats went on an 8-0 like winning streak in like 2010 or something like that. And it's like she was their lucky charm. So but her and then another guy the composers, like they're like TV composers. Like she's moved from pop music into like television composing and stuff. So I don't think they were like big Broadway guys or anything. They weren't.
It was fine. But there's also no choreography. And that's a big beef I have with this. Because if you're going to do a musical
there was
episode,
some
let
choreography.
them dance.
There's the last number had some choreography. The Klingons had a little choreography.
Oh, that was a wonderful moment. What do you call it? What we're doing now is like what they do with the Klingons. We're on a StreamYard and we can see each other, and that's what they do. And they bust out into like a BTS boy band number for just 10 seconds.
It's really funny. I think there was like, honestly, when you do an episode like that, I think it's one thing to get a cast of like people that are on a comedy who are, I would say the odds that the cast of a comedy have some musical theater background are higher than the odds that the cast of a drama are, just in general. Yeah. And I would say they were very concerned, probably, about how the fans would take this, because it had never been done. And there's a lot of like, some younger fans are going to love it because musical episodes are de rigueur now, like you see them everywhere. And they're expecting that. They want them, like Buffy did it. And, they've all done it. And but then some older fans were going to get a little sweaty
Purists.
about it.
Right.
And and I think they were sort of maybe trying to ride the line a little. I would have gone for it a little more, but I love what they did. I think it's a spectacular episode of television.
I loved it. If
in context,
right. If Star Trek decides to become a musical, if there is a series that, a season where it's cop rock, but in space, I'm down with it. I liked the tone. I liked the story. This made me nerdier, I will say, because I was really
good.
With it. And I was very moved by the first episode. It was very moving.
Yeah.
It didn't make me feel like I want more of this, but I was glad I saw it. And then this one made me feel like, I would go for more of this. But there are no other musical episodes as of now.
There are no other musical episodes. There are musical things that happen throughout the series. Brent Spiner, who plays Data, has a number of musical things and on the show. His Data was, because Data was trying to understand humans, and so there was lots of things that he sang and that are sort of carried on and on. I was just at an event this weekend that was just a party that this is a music producer we know has at his home, and apparently Brent Spiner's son was at the party, and apparently the Brent Spiner had recorded an album I was not aware of that were all like Broadway American songbook. So there's a little of that in there, but it's really
we're everywhere, Brian. We're everywhere.
Yeah, you sure are.
Us musical theater lovers. Well, before we wrap up, I do have a fun fact. Pete, play my fun fact sting. So Anson Mount is the captain of this
Captain
ship.
Pike, right?
The very handsome, serious Anson Mount. And I know that name.
Spectacular hair. Yeah.
I don't know his work all that well, but I immediately went, oh no, that's the dude from the Britney Spears movie. He was in Crossroads. Here's a little fun fact. Anson Mount was reluctant to play the role of Ben Kimball in Crossroads because he thought the movie and the role were too cheesy and lame. However, while working on the movie City by the Sea in 2002, his co-star Robert De Niro encouraged him to take the part, being that De Niro is a big Britney Spears fan. During breaks from filming C, Mount and De Niro would go over the script from the movie Crossroads, Mount reading his lines and De Niro reading Spears' lines.
That's going to carry me through the rest of my day.
Not a girl. Right? I mean, who knew? What can you imagine Robert De Niro as Britney Spears?
What a terrific thing. Also, how amazing is Robert De Niro? He really he contains multitudes. He does. Good for him.
Hey, I love him. I know most people do. So our discussion is done. It's crazy, right?
Delightful.
If you have something burning you need to say about these two episodes or Star Trek or nerdery in general.
I would just say the thing, if I was, maybe I didn't choose the right two. I don't know, but I don't know that there are two. But I would say one of the great things about Star Trek is that you might, if you're not a sort of like science fiction fan, this is your show to get involved with the characters. And you might want to watch things like there's an episode or series called Deep Space Nine, which is amazing. And you guys might really enjoy because it takes place on a space station. And so it's stationary. So it's a lot more of kind of like living together, stuff that I think you would find really good. It's also got a lot of humor in it that you didn't really see in these episodes, except maybe a little bit in Subspace Rhapsody, which has some comedy.
Okay. I'm going to wrap it up with my business. And then for members only, stick around. I'm going to share with Brian how I wrote Deep Space Nine into a screenplay. You're going to be wildly impressed. And and then I'm going to pick Brian's brain about some of these shows he's worked on because I think it's fascinating and exciting. So thank you, Brian Bradley. Oh, and tell everybody where they can find you if you want people to reach out on social media or you don't.
I don't care. I don't think any of my socials are public, but I'm frequently writing for geekgirlauthority.com.
Great.
And do a lot of coverage for them, and a lot of interviews and things and think pieces for them. It's a really great site. So please visit GGA, we call it, or geekgirlauthority.com. And yeah, that's about it right now. I think so. That's what I do. My socials are just for my family usually.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No judgment here.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming. And
Thank you for
after my
having me.
business, I'm going to tell everybody what I'm up to for the next episode with your wife, Audrey Kearns.
Yay.
All right.
Oof.
So
All right.
Make Me a Nerd is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Pete Wright. And that awesome theme song is by Jane and the Boy. Please, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, write a 5-star review, Brian Bradley, and write your thoughts down and reach out that way. And you can also reach out to me on socials at Mandy_Kaplan_Clavens, both with Ks. And y'all, there's a membership now, makemeanerd.com, and hit that join button. And $5 a month gets you extra content and lots more access to me and this journey. I really, really appreciate it. And it allows me to keep doing what I do. Now, next week, I already told you, spoiler alert, Audrey Kearns, the Geek Girl Authority herself, is going to be my guest. If this marriage lasts, I won't.
It's day by day.
It's day by day. There's a whole week. I don't know what's going to happen, but if it's all good, she's going to come on, and she has assigned me a show I've never heard of called Farscape.
Oh boy.
It actually gives Galaxy Quest vibes from the pictures, but I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I'm very excited to find out. So that will be next week. Thank you all, and goodbye for now.